What's going on, gang? Red Channels here. So recently, Vogue posted this article, Is Having a Boyfriend Embarrassing Now? By Shantae Joseph. And I had a lot of thoughts, but let's go ahead and check in on how the culture has been reacting to it.
Vogue just posted an article saying having a boyfriend is embarrassing. I think for men, this is a wake up call. To the smart, independent woman with good salary, nice place, we provide no benefit. We are no longer the priority. In fact, we're probably a burden to them. We need to realize having a girlfriend is a privilege, and our duty is to raise them up and make them the most successful version of themselves. That might mean doing the laundry and picking up the dishes. It might mean working harder to support them so they can go back to school. It might mean just focusing on ourselves more to be the best versions of ourselves, to inspire them to want to do the same. I think a healthy relationship involves both people raising each other up to be the best versions of themselves and doing whatever they can to support that person to be able to do that. Right now, I don't think men are doing that. I think men don't really provide a benefit. We need to figure out how to provide that benefit so we are no longer embarrassing.
I'm glad that this man's wife's boyfriend was kind enough to let him post this video. But, anyways, what's causing this fissure between men and women is massive underlying structural forces which are interacting with primal human urges. There's no amount of, we need to do better as men and be more attentive and supportive and help her along in her career that's going to fix this situation. A woman wants a man of similar or ideally greater status to be her partner. She wants to be provided for and taken care of. Also, in the modern age, she wants to have leverage and authority over men. She wants to keep her social equality in the workplace and believes she deserves to make as much or more money than any generic abstract man out there, and believes she is entitled to sit at the top of major companies just as men do. However, you can't climb the ladder of capitalism on your own, have independent wealth, status, and respect, because the workplace is now a honeycomb bureaucratic hive more than it is a factory floor, and receive the benefits of your traditional role as a woman, which is to be cared for and provided for by a successful and socially superior man. So, women entering the realm of men and artificially being successful, and I say artificially because there are laws that can and have forced women into certain job positions, means necessarily that some men will lose status. The male feminist remedy to this situation, which you just saw, is to double down and blame men and to promote sycophancy, obsequiousness, and golden retriever boyfriendness. Imagine a man who raises his son to be the sort of servile loser that says it's a privilege to be with a woman. I know men who are completely whipped, can't engage in hobbies, isolated from their friends, afraid to speak their minds, embarrassed and humiliated by their girlfriend's public emotional outbursts. Is being with a woman really a privilege then? I mean, don't get me wrong, they're losers for allowing themselves and continuing to be in situations where they're treated like that. But at some point in this country's history, we went from treating women like people to treating them like little angels who can do no wrong, who, it's you're blessed if one even gives you her attention. When that's just totally not the case. They do not have moral worth like that.
When someone tells me that they're interested in me and I should just give them a chance, I genuinely ask them, what are you going to give me that I already don't give myself? I have an extensive routine, okay? I wake up at 4:30, I read for an hour, then I go to the gym for an hour. Then I get ready to go to my full-time job. While I'm getting ready, I make myself breakfast. Then I pack my lunch, which I have already meal prepped for myself for the full week. I go to work, I come home from work. I come home, I go to the gym for another hour or two. Then I come back up to my apartment that I pay rent for, and I clean, I cook, anything else. And then if I have any time before my 9:30 p.m. bedtime, I do another one of my many hobbies that I have: color, read, crochet, puzzle, who knows. What are you going to give me that I already don't give myself? I want something, I buy it. I pay for all my own bills. I cook for myself. I clean for myself. What are you going to give me that I already don't give myself? Because my time is fully booked.
It's always the girl boss women who dismiss the problem of male status decline or just overlook it. They make their own money, have a bunch of failed relationships under their belt, get into that Sex in the City lifestyle, and then they get stuck in this binary view of men that's transactional, if not predatory, going, "What do you bring to the table? Don't you dare disturb a woman's peace." But then also see some of the consequences and concessions that come with a man providing for them, being in a position of power and status, having authority and leverage over them as coercive, domineering, or threatening. And related to this whole conversation, on Twitter, someone said, ironically, women have never been more secure or self sufficient, and somehow that made dating harder, not easier. And this person responded, dating would improve tenfold. Marriage rates would skyrocket if we simply banned women from earning above the poverty line. They also said this would make women happier, and cited this thing saying women's self reported happiness is down 83% since 1970. Women taking their own lives rate up 50% since 2000. Antidepressant use among women up 250% since 1990. Single motherhood up 700% since 1960. Women on anxiety meds, 1 in 4. Female workforce participation up 75%, but life satisfaction down 200%. College women report record loneliness and depression. 40% of women have engaged in self harm, ranging from cutting to taking their own lives. And he says, make women poor again. Someone asked, where would we live before marriage then? My parents wouldn't support me. And he said, perhaps in some sort of giant vending machine or a Foyd farm. So, not entirely serious, but funny and highlighting a real point. This guy reacted, however, make women poor again. This is the Islamization of the American right. They want to turn women back into a lower class under the guise it's somehow better. If you thought Handmaid's Tale was bad, wait till you get your burqa in the mail. And I don't know if this guy's being glib or if he really thinks that this sentiment, the make women poor again sentiment, is going to lead to mass conversions to Islam in America. I mean, if he is, he's just a complete tool. Um, and this guy, this is like the sort of evangelical Zionist who is on the way to becoming a never Trumper very soon. But anyway, to get back to the real pressing issue at hand here, material conditions are a critically important part of relationships. Both liberal feminists and evangelicals don't get this. Make women poor again is meme worthy. Perhaps not the best way to begin having this conversation, but this is Twitter. He was joking around, and the underlying point which he is highlighting remains. The idea that a woman is just going to love you altruistically in some airy, fairy, abstract, romantic way for who you are and not what you do is ridiculous. She just lets Jesus into her heart, and now money's not a factor. Get out of here. That's ridiculous. It's a ridiculous thing to suggest. This is the very same. You've got to be more personal and nice as a man because women's standards have changed. Garbage that liberals and male feminists pull. Relationships are inherently transactional, or more precisely, relationships have a core aspect, which is that they are transactional. Your wife is not really your best friend because she's still trying to extract resources from you in the way a peer wouldn't. And now I'm not suggesting every woman is digging for gold out here like a 49er, but resources certainly play a role, and it's a man's duty to provide. And I think these evangelicals and even a lot of these feminists would agree with that. However, the biblical standard of marriage laid out in Leviticus assumes that a man pays a dowry or bride price for a virgin wife. And I think this has been estimated to be something like $150,000 in today's money. Anyway, the point was that there was a clear price and that it was transactional. Biblical patriarchy, which this self-identified Christian is inadvertently clutching his pearls at, is inherently in tension with modern Western egalitarian liberal democratic capitalism. And because of this, we on the right need to contemplate very thoughtfully the appropriate economic and social program to restructure society such that its material conditions are conducive to marriage and family life. But anyway, back to this Vogue article. This Vogue article is doing what American 4B women, if you remember that a couple months ago, right around the election, wanted to do, but could never pull off, mostly because America doesn't have the same racial and cultural unity that Korea does. And even over there, the number of women who actually professed to be a part of the 4B movement itself was pretty small. Korea had a more cohesive traditional culture more recently than the US did. And East Asians generally value conformity more than Westerners do. So in America, we see this same sort of sentiment being manifested, but and this, to be clear, this Vogue article was apparently Vogue Britain, but still in the West generally, we see the same sentiment being manifested, but it's much more vibes based, and the impact isn't quite as far reaching. It begins more subtly, and it's more like, well, all the hot girls in major metropolitan areas are doing this, so we should too. It's much more ethereal, not like a bulleted list of how women should collectively react to men. But um, it's possible that this Vogue article is the payoff of the decenter men conversations that were going on in the girlosphere for years before this, although those conversations themselves are really a reaction to the material conditions that we've already discussed in this video. It's worth pointing out that decenter men, while still carrying strong 4B and femcel impulses, is not inherently against having relationships with men. But socially speaking, overall, what I think this article represents is that a critical mass of women have had negative experiences in dating men and are aggravated by their inability to start a comfortable family life. The reference point for social success is now no longer marriage because our culture is more geared toward and dominated by single adults. There's people saying they're spiritually single all over TikTok, which, if my girlfriend ever posted this, she would be spiritually and physically single the next day, which reflects, in my opinion, that even though these women are in a relationship with a man, they still have the same detached, skeptical, cynical, transactional attitude that the rest of the women in the girlosphere has toward men. Anyway, let's continue on and take another look at how the culture is reacting to this article.
Like, is having a boyfriend embarrassing now? Disclaimer that this conversation may be above your intellectual bracket. If you don't understand how to engage in cultural conversations, this is not a safe space for you.
Terrible way to begin this discussion right off the bat.
We know that men are increasingly becoming losers. You can clearly see that with the incels, the red pill content, or even in areas like education where men are not doing well in school, especially compared to their female peers. Men are also deliberately engaging in antisocial behaviors. You're not going to have a good social standing when you are engaging in antisocial behaviors, on top of the fact that a lot of men just do not like women. I, in a different video, encourage men to have a few platonic relationships with women, and they were, why would I do that? That's just the stupidest thing I've ever heard. The fact that a lot of men think that it is stupid or pointless to just be friends with women says a lot about how they view women. They don't view them as people. They don't view them as equals. They only view them as this thing you go to for sex and other transactional reasons, but they don't see you on the same level as them. They wouldn't even be your friend.
I actually do think if you're single and starting out as a guy, you should have maybe a couple friendships platonically with women because they may know other women who you might want to date. But these platonic relationships are still transactional in a sense. You are giving your time and attention to this woman. Maybe it's not necessarily like a friend zone thing because maybe you aren't like directly pursuing her yourself and there isn't the same tension there, but you're still giving your time and attention as a man to a woman. So that's what she's getting out of it.
They're living in the world of their fathers and grandfathers without having any of the things that their fathers and grandfathers had, including the society that their fathers and grandfathers had. Their fathers and grandfathers went to work and made enough money to provide for a whole family. They could fix everything around the house. They could go out and they could work on a car. All these things that they are not. They're broke, don't know how to do anything, can't talk to anybody, very uneducated. And so why would a woman want to engage with you when she doesn't have to? She's single and she's having a very fulfilling life as a single woman.
These single lives are actually not that fulfilling. They're just sustainable enough that they don't feel the need to partner with most men who they would otherwise ordinarily probably date. But
For a woman who is doing well in her life and has a great community of friends and is really working on her personal development and all these things, to look at a man who is a loser and to partner with a man who is a loser is embarrassing. Now, a lot of them still do it, which the article did not address. And this is when we're going to go to women, because women are not innocent in this equation either. A lot of women lack discernment. So I can spot a loser 30 miles away. But somehow you could not tell that this man was a loser when he walked up to you or when he first messaged you. You went on this date, and within a couple of questions, you couldn't tell he was a loser, and you kept, or even if you did, you still kept sitting there. You, as a woman, you have a certain type of man that you like, that you engage with, and even if that man does not have traits that are actually beneficial to you, you still put up with it until it boils over and it's a disaster.
someone said, saw a great video recently of a female counselor explaining that she has lost track of the number of 25 to 35-year-old female patients who described their perfect man, and then when asked about the last 5 men they'd slept with, not a single one had the traits described. I think what's actually going on here is that their standards are so high. Like, obviously, they're not going to be meeting tons of people who check off every box. So they're still going to go on dates, though. But this ends up just being, it's driven more by vibes. And they end up just falling prey to guys who emotionally manipulate them or whatever, or are able to just get them to spread their legs, like just make them feel a certain way, and maybe they have some of the traits described that they really like, enough that they're turned on by the idea of being with them. And this is exactly the sort of thing which leads to the collective social burnout, which produces a culture which produces a Vogue article like this in the first place. Anyways, that's it for this video. I hope you enjoyed it. Please give it a like, share, subscribe if you haven't already, and Red Channels will catch you in the next one.